Good morning and welcome to the Maryland Public Service Commission's meeting for August 25th, 2021. I will begin with an operational announcement. A few weeks ago, I noted that the Commission would be reopening its hearing room on the 16th floor to the public after Labor Day. Of course, with the change in situation regarding COVID, we're going to postpone that, and the hearing room will remain closed to the public until further notice. Obviously, Maryland is a leader, both in terms of vaccination rate, and we're ranked approximately 42nd in the country in terms of positive cases. However, it would remain prudent for now for that hearing room to continue to be closed. Of course, all of our other public-facing services and operations continue to be open here at 6 St. Paul Street in Baltimore. I'd like to make a few personnel announcements. First, I'd like to recognize the hard work and upcoming retirement of Celeste Middleton in our Consumer Affairs Division. Celeste has been with us for many years, assisting a tremendous number of customers down in CAD, and we'd like to just wish her well in her retirement. Thank you, Celeste. I'd also like to introduce and welcome our newest employee, Brett Sproul. He's a regulatory economist in our electricity division. He's also a recent graduate of the University of Maryland, College Park, where he received a degree in environmental economics. Brett's also a former Fed, having both worked for the Department of Agriculture as well as the Department of Energy. So welcome aboard, Brett. I'd also like to recognize another staffing change in the electricity division, as Afton Hauer moves from the TGW division over to the electricity division. So welcome, Afton, for your new placement in the commission. With that, we have meeting minutes to approve from the last meeting on August 11th, 2021. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The meeting minutes are approved. Good morning, Mr. Secretary.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. There are 21 items on today's consent agenda. Also, item number 22 on the administrative agenda is going to be deferred to a future administrative meeting. To the consent agenda, item number 1 is an unbundled network element loop forbearance amendment to an interconnection agreement between Verizon Maryland LLC and BCN Telecom Inc. Item number 2 is a request from Magna 5 LLC regarding Cornerstone Telephone Company LLC's assessments. Items number 3 through 8 consist of revised tariff pages regarding 8YY access charge reform from respectively Charter FiberLink Maryland 2 LLC, CenturyLink Communications LLC, Broadwing Communications LLC, Telcove Operations Inc., Level 3 Telecom of Maryland LLC, and Global Crossing Local Services Inc. Items number 9 through 20 are weather station designations for extreme weather periods under COMAR 20.31.0303 and 20.31.0304 from respectively Columbia Gas of Maryland Inc., Hagerstown Light Department, Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative Inc., UGI Utilities Inc., Easton Utilities, the Potomac Edison Company, Potomac Electric Power Company, and Delmarva Power and Light Company, Baltimore Gas and Electric Company, Washington Gas Light Company, Chesapeake Utilities Corporation, Sandpiper Energy Inc., and Elkton Gas Company. And finally, item number 21 is an application from Diamond Energy East LLC for a license to supply electricity.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have questions on the consent agenda item? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question on item number 21. Concerning the complaints note. It says the company is currently in the process of obtaining licenses in several other jurisdictions, but footnote 3 and 4 indicate that this is a subsidiary of a much bigger operation, Mitsubishi Corporation being the primary, down through Diamond Generating Corporation, and it lists other affiliates, including Boston Energy Trading and Marketing LLC. And I'm wondering, my question then becomes, because there is an extensive operating conglomerate here, did we note any complaints in the other affiliates that come down from Mitsubishi Corporation in the energy trading or third-party supplier realm? Ms. Zhang, you're muted. I'm sorry.
Commissioner O'Donnell, as Ms. Zhang works on her hardware issue, perhaps we can inquire if the company is with us, and maybe they'll be able to answer the question. Do we have a representative from Diamond Energy East LLC with us?
Yeah, good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. This is Eric Wallace with the law firm Green Herlocker, representing Diamond Energy East LLC, and I'm joined by Richard Hudson, who's the head of regulatory matters for the applicant. In the application, the company provided a pretty extensive list of the affiliate entities. There are not, they are in the process of entering the retail space, so there are not existing affiliates that are in the third-party retail supply space for which there are complaints and things. So in staff's investigation, and I think staff will relay this as the connection issue is addressed here, but there are not any complaint issues along the lines of what Commissioner O'Donnell has expressed concern about as part of this, because this is a new venture in terms of the retail energy space for the applicant.
So the Boston Energy Trading and Marketing LLC is not engaged in retail supply of any nature?
My understanding is that is a wholesale supply entity, and I'd invite if Mr. Hudson has any additional thoughts there to let me know, but that's my understanding.
Yes, that is correct. Boston Energy Trading and Marketing operates as a wholesale power marketer, so it does not have direct end-use retail customer relationships in place, and there are no complaints to note with respect to that entity.
Okay. And I'm sure Green Herlocker and the company are very, very aware of the renewed interest in vetting the operations of third-party suppliers with regard, and I know you share those concerns with me, and I ask these questions mainly to put on notice new entrants into our Maryland market that we're going to be watching very closely here at the commission. Ms. Zhang, do we have you back? We still can't hear you. It's okay. I think I have my answer.
If I may,
And
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there she is.
We got you now.
Yes, the company, their affiliates are in the process of applying for licenses in other states. Is still a work in progress.
Okay, fair enough.
yes, and Commissioner, yeah, this is Richard Hudson on behalf of Diamond Energy. I duly noted your comments and the Commission's longstanding track record of ensuring a reputable marketplace for the benefit of Maryland's energy consumers. I just wanted to go on record by stating that is in total alignment with our broader parent company's philosophy. As we noted in our license application, we share the overall global corporate principles of Mitsubishi Corporation. One of those is integrity in all business dealings, and we look forward to bringing that mindset into the retail energy supply space in Maryland and in all of the other jurisdictions in which we intend to operate.
Very good, Mr. Hudson. I'm glad to hear that, and thank you for sharing that with us. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Seeing none, I would propose that with respect to item number 1, that we approve the interconnection agreement 10 days after a 30-day comment period unless adverse comments are filed. With respect to item number 2, I move that we rescind the authority of Cornerstone Telephone Company, LLC, to operate in Maryland, cancel its tariffs, and refer the company's outstanding commission's assessment to Maryland's Central Collection Unit. With respect to items number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, I move that we accept the tariff revisions for filing effective on the dates stated in the respective filings. With respect to items number 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20, I move that we approve the weather station designations for the purpose of determining when there is an extreme weather period that requires restrictions on electricity and natural gas service terminations under the Code of Maryland Regulations, Title 20, Subtitle 31, Chapter 3, Regulations 3 and 4. And with respect to item number 21, I move that we grant Diamond Energy East LLC a license to operate as an electricity supplier in Maryland for the customer classes and service territories applied for and recommended by staff, and direct the company to provide marketing materials specific to its Maryland operations to the Commission staff and Office of People's Counsels 30 days prior to utilization of those materials in Maryland, and direct the company to file notice with the Commission within 30 days of any changes to its information in its application. The vote begins with Commissioner Herman,
Aye.
Commissioner Linton,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Aye.
and Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motions are approved. Mr. Secretary, the administrative agenda, please.
Mr. Chairman, item number 23 on the administrative agenda consists of updated retail transmission rates for Rider SOS and Rider EV from Potomac Electric Power Company. On this item for staff, we have Anna Joy Harris and Michael Dean, and for the company, Matt Seegers and Lance Schaefer.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Harris.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Anna Joy Harris on behalf of staff. On July 14th, 2021, Potomac Electric Power Company filed updated retail transmission rates and standard offer service rates for plug-in vehicle, residential, Type 1, Type 2, and hourly customers. Furthermore, on August 3rd, 2021, Devco filed updated exhibits to correct an error concerning the transmission peak load contribution for rate Schedule T. The proposed transmission rates are based on the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission jurisdictional wholesale transmission rate, which became effective June 1st, 2021. Under the filing, all retail transmission rates are increasing between 5 and 19%, with the exception of Schedule TMTR, for which the rate is decreasing by 24%. Pepco estimates that the proposed transmission rates will result in an average net monthly bill impact of 88 cents for a residential SOS customer using 811 kilowatt hours per month. This increase in rates is primarily due to an approximately $21 million increase in the true-up amount, which is driven by Financial Account Standard 109 refunds and lower operations and management costs. Staff recommends that the Commission accept for filing the proposed tariff changes with an effective date of September 1st, 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll turn to the utility, Potomac Electric Power Company.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Matthew Seeger is appearing for Pepco. Also appearing with me for the Pepco filing is our subject matter expert, Mr. Lance Shaver. We have nothing to add to staff's presentation, but we are available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Do commissioners have questions on item number 23? Seeing none, I would propose that we accept the revised tariff pages for filing with an effective date of September 1st, 2021. The vote begins with Commissioner Herman,
Aye.
Commissioner Linton,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Aye.
and Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved.
Mr. Chairman, item number 24 on today's administrative agenda consists of updated retail transmission rates from Delmarva Power and Light Company. On this item for staff, again, Anna Joy Harris and Michael Dean, and for the company, Matt Seegers and Michael Normand.
Thank you. We'll turn to Ms. Harris yet again.
Good morning again. Anna Joy Harris on behalf of staff. On July 14th, 2021, Delmarva Power and Light Company filed updated retail transmission rates and standard offer service rates for plug-in vehicle, residential, Type 1, Type 2, and hourly customers. The proposed rates are based on the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission jurisdictional wholesale transmission rate, which became effective June 1st, 2021. Under the filing, all retail transmission rates are increasing between 3 and 49% for all classes and are increasing by 76% for Schedule ORL. Staff estimates that the proposed transmission rates will have an average monthly bill impact of $4.41 for a residential SOS customer using 1,018 kilowatt hours per month. This increase in rates is primarily due to an approximately $33 million increase in the true-up amount, which is driven by Financial Account Standard 109 refunds and significant transmission additions. Staff recommends that the Commission accept for filing the proposed tariff changes with an effective date of September 1st, 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Seegers, anything to add?
Nothing, Your Honor. Just available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, I move that we accept the revised tariff pages for filing with an effective date of September 1st, 2021. The vote begins with Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved.
Mr. Chairman, today's final item, item number 25, consists of gas supplier tariff revisions concerning renewable natural gas interconnection service from Baltimore Gas and Electric Company. On this item, there are a number of participants. For staff, Afton Hauer, Ben Baker, Samuel Teta, John Brokowski, and Peter Wilson. For the company, Bev Sikora, John Frayne, Stuart Page, Brian Shearer, Rob Rex, and Trina Allen. For Office of People's Counsel, Joe Cleaver. And for Bioenergy Devco LLC, Larry Prange, Peter Edinger, and McLean Porter.
Thank you. We will begin with staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners and Chairman. This is Benjamin Baker on behalf of staff. With me today are Peter Wilson, Afton Hauer, Samuel Teha, and John Borkowski. On June 4th, 2021, BG&E filed proposed tariff pages that would enable a customer to supply renewable natural gas on BG&E's distribution system through an interconnection agreement. The tariff pages establish gas quality standards that must be met by the RNG producers, set forth the terms and conditions of the interconnection service, describes the process that must be completed before RNG producers are able to connect to BG&E's distribution system, and proposes rates to be charged for the interconnection service. The RNG customer is responsible for costs associated with implementing the interconnection agreement and ongoing costs. The proposal also required some modifications to BG&E's gas supplier tariff. Staff has proposed modifications to the tariff, requests future obligations to BG&E to monitor and revise the RNG tariff over time related to cost recovery and operations, and request modifications of the gas quality standards but provides flexibility for specific customers. OPC, Bioenergy Devco, and BG&E filed letters in response to staff's comments. OPC defers to staff's analysis for gas quality standards and does not oppose BG&E's filing. Bioenergy Devco opposes staff's proposed gas quality standards and recommends the Commission adopt BG&E's proposed tariff as submitted. Finally, BG&E comments indicate both support and opposition to different staff proposals. BG&E supports staff's proposals to require future reporting in BG&E's purchase gas cost proceeding, tariff language to change the definition of renewable gas authorized marketer, and supports staff's RNG quality standard proposals and notification requirements. BG&E conditioned its agreement to staff's RNG quality standards on the understanding that the initial supplier using the tariff would be permitted to deviate from a standard. The following comments are in response to the proposals that have been opposed by BG&E. Staff notes that most of its proposals are an attempt to provide flexibility and improve upon the offering in the future, since the proposal before the Commission is a tariff and should not be considered a single customer contract with a customer. The proposal before the Commission sets the standards for all customers wanting to provide RNG on the BG&E system, since it is a tariff. I'm going to walk through there's 6 oppositions that BG&E has to our tariff, our recommendations, which are on page 20. They're summarized on page 27 of our comments. So I'm going to tell you which number I'm on for you to follow along. BG&E disagrees with staff's first recommendation, where staff requested that BG&E in its next base rate case and every 3 years after file revised rates for schedule RNG based on actual cost. BG&E opposes this because they believe it is unnecessary, and parties are able to choose to review the issues on their own. Additionally, they believe the costs for the current tariff are small, and if this changes in the future, it can be reviewed at that time. Staff still believes this requirement is important to ensure that there's an established process in place to ensure rates continue to reflect actual cost, and should those begin to change in the future. Even though BG&E only has one customer today, it is reasonable to have an established process if the offering grows. BG&E does disagree with staff's second recommendation, where we requested BG&E to provide a cost-benefit analysis of potentially upgrading its system to permit RNG customers to contract with multiple RNG suppliers in their next rate case. They believe that there is no benefit to this proposal at this time due to no entity expressing a desire for it. Staff recognizes this, but as stated in our comments, we believe that this could be an unnecessary hindrance to competition in the future, and that we do not see a provision in the tariff that would allow a supplier or I guess the RNG customer to seek remedy or request the upgrade to sell to multiple suppliers at this time. BG&E disagrees with part 1 of our third recommendation to revise section 3.4 of the tariff, which required BG&E to notify a supplier contracted with a RNG customer of service disconnections driven by BG&E. BG&E disagrees with our recommendation, claiming it treats the supplier providing RNG no different than other suppliers, and because they believe that the RNG's that since there's an agreement between the supplier and the RNG customer, that is the RNG customer's responsibility to notify that supplier. We still support our modification since BG&E is the driver of the outage, not the RNG customer, and we also note that BG&E is already informing the RNG customer of the outage. BG&E found that our second recommendation of the second part of staff's third recommendation was unnecessary since their gas supplier tariff already discusses the need for a force majeure event, but has no issue with including our language if the commission directs it. Staff does continue to support the inclusion of the language to make it clear that suppliers are protected in those instances. BG&E disagrees with staff's fifth recommendation to include a condition in section 4 of the tariff that BG&E only take gas if the system can take delivery of the gas. BG explains that at the time the customer applies to supply RNG, the company will determine if their system has the capacity to accept that quantity of RNG that is specified in the interconnection agreement. Staff notes that this is specified in section 1 of BG&E's proposed tariff, and because of that, staff agrees that this provision is unnecessary and would agree with striking our fifth recommendation. BG&E disagrees with staff's sixth recommendation to include an additional imbalance threshold to the tariff in section 4.2. BG&E does not agree because the current customer looking to supply RNG onto BG&E's distribution system will have small volumes of load, and so they believe that the imbalance provision that staff has proposed would make it unmanageable for that customer. They believe if at a later date that a customer wants to provide larger volumes of RNG kind of next to the system, that it can be revisited at that time. Once again, as staff has stated before, this is a tariff that is available to all customers, and so it should be structured as such to accommodate them. With that stated, staff recognizes that this could be a provision that could be a hindrance to the current provider, and so, or the current customer wanting to take service. So staff would support adding a term to the tariff or to our recommendation there, that through the interconnection agreement, BG&E and the customer may agree to utilize one of the two imbalance thresholds within the tariff. Staff recognizes that as more RNG customers utilize the service, that the imbalance tariff language may need to be revisited. Staff continues to support its minimum gas quality standards to ensure safe and reliable service while also trying to balance flexibility provided to the company and RNG customers to deliver RNG to the system. Therefore, staff modifies two of its recommendations on page 27 of its comments. Staff recommends striking requirement number 5, as this is already covered in BG&E's tariff, and to modify number 6 to include the provision through the interconnection agreement, the customer and BG&E may agree to utilize one of the two imbalance thresholds within the tariff. With these modifications, staff recommends that the commission accept for filing the company's revisions to the gas supplier tariff, subject to the commission's and conditions and revisions proposed by staff, and direct the company to file revised tariff pages with an effective date of August 25th, 2021, and we are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Before we move on to other parties, I just wanted to be clear. Is staff rescinding its condition number 5 on page 27?
Yes, that is the condition. Yes, that is the condition that they modify their tariff for a supplier to, or for BG&E to determine at the time of request to take gas that they can take the gas. So yes.
Okay. All right. So condition number 5 is off the table. When it's BGE's turn, it would be helpful if we could address these issues in the same order. So that would be conditions number 1, 2, 3A, which is the first part of 3, and number 6. At this time, we will turn to Bioenergy Devco. Good morning.
Good morning. This is Larry Prang. I'm in-house counsel for Bioenergy Devco. I'm here with Peter Ettinger and McLean Porter, also at Bioenergy Devco. At this point, we really have nothing else to add. We're just going to stand by the comments we've already followed. Happy to answer any questions, however.
Thank you. If there are no other parties before the utility that wish to speak, we will turn to the utility, Baltimore Gas and Electric.
Good morning, Chairman Stanek and Commissioners. Beverly Sikora on behalf of BGE. As the Executive Secretary indicated, do have several other people here with me today in case we get into questions that are beyond my capability. BGE did file comments in response to staff's buck sheet yesterday morning. We apologize that they were a little late. There was a lot to get through. Included in those comments were revised tariff sheets showing the changes that staff proposed that we did agree with. But I will go through the remaining ones where we have a disagreement. First, the recommendation number 1 about updating this in our next, updating the customer charge in our next base rate case in every 3 years thereafter. BGE, again, doesn't feel this is necessary. This is a base distribution charge, just like any other base distribution charge, and those rates get examined during a BGE distribution rate case. We don't think it's necessary to establish a unique review procedure for this particular customer charge. BGE, while we have every intention of staying on the MYP schedule for, the time being, it could be that several years down the road, we might no longer be on a 3-year schedule. And so, it could be we go back to filing rate cases more frequently, in which case we would examine the customer charges more frequently. We might go to something different. We don't think it's necessary to establish a unique procedure just for this particular customer charge. I'll pause in case you want to ask questions now, or if you want to wait till I'm completely through all 4 issues.
Ms. Sikora, we'll save the questions to the end.
Okay. So moving on to issue 2 about requiring us to include a cost-benefit analysis in our next rate case about upgrading our system to allow an RNG customer to have multiple suppliers that they're working with. I guess, BGE is very supportive of RNG. We've been working closely with Bioenergy on this. It just seems premature to require us to have a cost-benefit analysis to evaluate something that no one was requesting. At a minimum, it would be difficult. We'd have to kind of figure out the design for ourselves. Since we don't have anyone who's proposing what they want, we'd have to kind of figure out what we think other people might want, which would, make it a little more difficult. And as well, if someone before our next rate case were to say, hey, we think this is something we'd like you to look at, BGE would not wait for our next rate case. We'd start looking at, whether it was appropriate to go further with this. So again, it seems premature to require us to do something that no one wants and that, we'd be willing to do sooner than 3 years. Moving on to 3A about notifying an RNG supplier when BGE is calling or requiring a temporary disconnection. One thing I think we forgot to mention in our comments is that we might not necessarily know who the supplier is that the RNG producer is selling its gas to. That RNG producer could be working with the supplier that is working on our system already, or that is already on our system. And we don't have any particular way of knowing that this is the particular supplier. So, short of us then having to require the RNG producer to tell us what supplier they're working with, we don't otherwise know. And I understand staff's comment that this is something within our control, but suppliers have to deal with issues like this all the time. A pipeline could have an issue where they're not able to fully supply the gas quantity that the supplier has, nominated on their system. That there's a host of other reasons. Suppliers are, used to dealing with this. So there's nothing particularly unique about this situation, albeit that, BG is the one that's calling or is the reason for the temporary disconnection. Finally, the imbalance threshold, allowing the interconnection agreement to specify whether it's the lower of 1,000 decatherm or the 20% of, I can't remember exactly what it is. It's the 5 days, 5 highest of the preceding 7 days nominations. Again, at this time, we think that just focusing on 1,000 decatherms makes sense. Otherwise BGE is going to have to, go through and have a separate process to deal with this. And, again, if we thought that this was a, concern, that it would somehow cause issues, we would certainly be willing to do this, but we think we can handle, an imbalance of 1,000 decatherms without much issue. We think that's, reasonable for the supplier and the producer as well to deal with. And so to try and add this complication, even if you're giving BGE and the RNG producer a choice over which one, I think, while I agree that both of those conditions are used elsewhere in our tariff, I don't see the need for it to be have to be consistent in this particular situation. So I believe I have covered everything, but if I haven't, please let me know.
Thank you, Ms. Sikora, and please bear with us as this is the first renewable natural gas tariff that has been presented before the commission. I know that we have a number of other proposals currently in-house, and I want to thank our staff particularly for putting together a very detailed buck sheet for our review. Just so we have some order to this discussion that's about to proceed, I'd like to focus in order in the number of contested conditions. So that's 1, 2, 3A, and 6. And after the commissioners ask their questions of those items, we will we'll turn to Bioenergy Devco's concerns regarding gas quality. So with respect to item number 1, where we'll focus first, I guess I'll turn to Mr. Baker, and at least in my opinion, Ms. Sikora makes a compelling point that if there's changes to its actual rates, they have no other requirement but to have them reflected in the next rate case. So is a explicit requirement necessary here in the tariff? That's my only question.
Excuse me. So staff isn't requesting that the tariff be modified to reflect that requirement. Staff is simply requesting that it be a requirement that BG&E makes the proposal in the next case. So currently it would just be we intend to do it. This would codify it as a requirement to do it in the next base rate case. And every 3 years after is premised on the idea that we would hope and assume that more customers would use this tariff. And so today we're dealing with very small costs of, I think it's $30,000, 35. And then maybe it's $35,000 is what their estimated O&M costs are for this. And so I assume that if we start dealing with more and more customers, that charge, that the cost going in could change, maybe significantly, may not, but that's part of why we've also premised a request for this to be revisited every so often.
Thanks. And I suspect Mr. Corr would say that it's obvious that the utility would revisit this on their own motion. Is that your argument, Ms. Sikora?
Yes, and certainly in a base rate case, we could always, other people could as well, to the extent that they disagreed. I'll add as well that, right now that these costs are fairly discrete, but it also could happen that in the future that, we need to look at these costs, in kind of conjunction with our other costs, so that trying to look at these costs separate from any of the other costs that we're incurring on our system, could make it difficult that, we end up having, two different schedules. Again, we may not be on an MYP forever, so it could be that 3-year schedule doesn't continue.
Okay.
And so it'd be kind of confusing to look at one set of costs in one proceeding and all the rest of our costs in a base rate case.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions on item 1? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to preface my questions by saying my knowledge level is admittedly light with regard to RNG applications. So I'm going to be asking some questions mainly for my edification, but I suspect there are others maybe who will be listening on the call who want to learn more about how RNG, which is a relatively new kid on the block with regard to gas distribution, fits into a system that goes back several hundred years, arguably. So I guess my first question related to item 1, since we're stepping through these, I'm going to probably have a bunch of others, is Ms. Sikora, can you characterize without identifying your customer that would pay a $3,000 monthly customer charge for this? That number just blew me away when I read that $3,000 customer charge. Am I reading that right?
That's correct.
Who characterize that kind of customer that pays a $3,000 customer charge?
That would be Bioenergy, who is here with us today, developer of the facility in Howard County.
And what is that figure based on? What is the basis of $35,000 a year customer charge?
So a lot of that, and we did provide staff with the breakdown, and we could provide that as well. It's a lot of it is doing the maintenance of the interconnection equipment. There's inspections that we're going to have to do on a regular basis and certain maintenance. This is basically, at times we've called this a little mini gate station. We have gate stations with our major pipeline interconnections, and so this is going to be somewhat similar in that it's a similar facility, just on a much smaller scale. But that facility will need to be inspected and maintained to make sure that everything's working properly. There's going to be, we'll be putting the odorization in at that point, so we'll be needing to make sure that that's all working. I suspect, and not an engineer, and I can probably, defer to someone if you have more detailed questions, but, there's going to be things that have to be, replaced on a regular basis, kind of like you maintain any other piece of equipment. I'm trying to think if there was any other major costs, and so really, I think it seems like a big amount, but when you really look at, sending people out, 4 or 5 times a year, doing all this other stuff, it does make sense what we're getting to.
Yeah, just what would a similarly situated customer or like Biodev on natural gas, what would their monthly customer charge be? You put me in a ballpark.
Well,
you don't have to be.
Oh, but I think we don't really have any other similarly situated customers. Everybody else that pays a customer charge is taking the gas from us. This is a case where this particular customer is giving us the gas. So again, I compare them to an interstate pipeline that we're, using on our system to get the gas that we supply all customers. In those cases, in the case of all the costs that we incur to do what we have to do at the pipeline gate stations, because those are kind of being used to serve everyone, those costs are spread across all other customers. In this case, we believed it was appropriate to, because frankly, we don't need the RNG to supply our customers. This is something that while we support it, it's not necessary. And so we believed it was appropriate for the developer to pay all those costs, and that, because we don't know which customers are actually going to be buying the RNG, we really couldn't have those customers pay any of those costs. So, looking at it from a cost causation standpoint, it made sense to put those costs on the developer.
Okay, so that's helpful for me. It helps me understand at least a part of this. So thank you for that. So Mr. Prang, let me ask you, you provide the high energy biogas, renewable gas, right? Your client.
That is correct.
And you pump it into the system, so you're basically a third-party supplier into the system. And does that RNG get mixed with all the other gas in the distribution system?
Yes, it will. And yeah.
Okay, so the quality of the gas isn't changed from a customer's viewpoint. In other words, I'm aware when propane gas is used, you need different nozzles in your appliances than if you use natural gas. There are differences in the gas. The quality of the gas is not changed, or the characteristics of the gas are not changed in a way that would affect an average customer in the state of Maryland. Is that right?
That is certainly the intention. Yeah, that is correct. And the gas will be, and that there certainly are, the gas quality standards are in the proposed tariff to make sure, like in the dew point and the heating value and what have you does not change.
I may be getting a little far afield from item number 1, so I'll yield, Mr. Chairman, for now, and see if I have any other questions as we proceed.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're all learning here, so we'll ask those questions as we go through. Commissioner Herman has a question on condition 1.
I do. Briefly, Mr. Baker, and you had so many staff members that I apologize for not writing down which one was the legal person, but whoever for staff, who is the legal person for staff?
Peter Wilson, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Wilson. Okay. Mr. Wilson, if BGE if the staff requirement is that BGE revise its customer charge in the next base rate and every 3 years after, and let's say the commission accepted that and BGE decided not to file a multi-year plan with this 3-year requirement, why wouldn't that be single issue rate making if BGE was required every 3 years to do a new customer charge for this alone?
That probably would be, Commissioner, and I think what I'm pinch hitting today for Mr. Spivak, but I think what was intended here was just to link this up with the anticipated every 3-year rate case, and since the multi-year rate case, if that would go the way of being reverting back to a yearly or a semi-yearly or process, then I guess this would be susceptible to change in the tariff. Mr. Baker can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was the intention of putting the 3 years in there.
It was certainly to align with the 3-year base rate or MRP if they were doing it, but it wasn't intended that if they weren't following the MRP that it would be binding to the MRP. I would note that we do something similar for Pepco's service connection fees. which are set outside of base rate cases. And so, and where we are updating those costs, well, they've historically been done on estimated costs, but now those are switching towards actual cost. Additionally, it's my understanding, and the company can correct me if I'm wrong, but that these costs are going to be updated based on the actual cost to provide to maintain this interconnection. So it's not going to, my understanding is it's not going through our traditional unitized rate of return two-step equation to allocate costs to these customers. This is a customer who will be putting gas onto BG&E system, so it's not really a customer that is taking gas and is acting as a true customer in the sense of that they're going to use gas from BG&E. My understanding is that this customer is simply, they're just, think of them as a wellhead. They are simply putting gas onto BG&E's system. And so under that assumption, I think that we've definitely set charges outside of rate cases before, and we have processes for that.
We do, but that's every year, I believe. Those service connections are every year. So what you're really trying to do is make sure that in that when BGE files rate cases, it uses actual costs and not you know, a standard rate making, you know, where you throw in all the costs and delegate the costs to various areas. Is that what you're really trying to get at, Mr. Baker?
I think it's a little more high level than that. I think it's ensuring that there's a vehicle to, or an obligation to examine those costs. So yes,
Yeah, but
I think that's how,
you know, they would do that in a rate case anyway, right? I mean, and if they didn't, then somebody could say, give me the actual costs for the customer charge, right? In a rate case.
They could, yes. I think that's, right. I think what we're just asking is let's establish the process to do it. But I understand your point. I think what we're saying is that, yes, but there's so many things that happen in a rate case. Don't let it slide in the cracks, especially considering that this is a new tariff.
Right. So Ms. Sikora, would the company be opposed to agreeing that in its next rate case that, you know, it will provide the actual costs of the customer charge?
Definitely not. But I will say that, you know, just a small caveat that while I think the actual costs will serve as the basis for the customer charge, if we know that, you know, something is increasing, you know, and again, we're still in an MYP situation, I think we would, you know, kind of take the actual costs and then factor in the, you know, the increase to any of those costs. You know, if I'm not thinking of a good example, but if, you know, say the cost of Mercaptan, we were aware and it was a known and measurable thing that the cost of Mercaptan was AAA, I think we would, you know, not just rely on the actual costs.
All right, I just,
yeah,
I tend to, yeah, I'm just trying to get to the point where I don't think we should set it for every 3 years. My concern is that, you know, gets preserved and we have a problem there. So, all right, thank you. I appreciate it. We can move on.
With the commentary, and if commissioners don't have additional questions, I would propose that I don't see BG&E as attempting to pull a fast one here, Mr. Baker. We did just receive a commitment on the record that Ms. Sikora will bring these costs into the next rate case, but I see no need to make this a requirement every 3 years after, because we don't know if BG is going to be using a multi-year rate case after this initial one expires, and I'd rather have the utility have some flexibility in making that determination. Do any commissioners object? Okay, hearing no objection, the commission rules in favor of BG with respect to condition number 1. Condition number 2 is with respect to multiple suppliers. And Ms. Sikora, just to confirm, your argument here is that staff's position is premature since you only have one customer, that is Bioenergy Devco, lined up for this tariff service at this point. Is that right?
Not quite. We have one customer, but that one customer is only planning to use one supplier to, you know, deal with the gas once it gets on our system. the question is if, in the future, Bioenergy or another RNG producer would want to be able to have multiple suppliers, take, I guess, take responsibility for the gas and move that gas and market it to other customers.
And at this time, there's no other customer that has shown any signaled any interest in subscribing to this tariff. Is that right?
That's correct. And again, BGE, to the extent that Bioenergy or any other RNG producer, did want to use multiple suppliers, at that time, BGE would certainly, look into it and determine, the costs and, because honestly, I think, our expectation would be that the RNG suppliers would pay for the upgrade to the system.
I agree with you, Mr. Core. I think it is premature at this time to require a cost benefit analysis when we only have one customer showing interest. I'll yield to my colleagues if they disagree.
I don't disagree, but I do have a related question, or maybe questions. I think one of the areas I'm getting a little confused is we call Mr. Prang's entity the customer, and we call the people who take the gas and off the system the supplier, and that's a little confusing for me. And so I want to seek to understand your supplier, Mr. Prang, that you have an arrangement with. Do they market this as renewable gas? How does that work?
They do, but I'm going to let my colleague McLean Porter jump in and answer this one. Give you a little information on that. McLean?
Well, I don't know that I'm going to be answering the exact question, because I think what you're referring to is the fact that we're cited as the customer in the tariff. Is that correct?
Well, no, I'm trying to understand how this whole scheme works.
We're trying to understand
at
the
a high
market
level.
dynamic
So-
in general. Okay, so
Okay.
in
So if-
general,
Go ahead.
so the way that we're getting the renewable natural gas to market is, so we interconnect with the local utility, in this case, Baltimore Gas and Electric. We saw what we call the brown gas, which is the physical molecules go into the natural gas distribution system. And then, so when we produce renewable gas, there's some environmental attributes associated with it, which come in the form of various marketable credits. There's RIN credits, there's LCF, there's all sorts of credits that are associated with it that we can, based on who we market the gas to, they will kind of generate those credits. So what happens is, in front of the meter, we sell our gas, and in this case, we have a large it's a large Larry, are we at liberty to say who our customers at this point?
It's a good question. I mean,
I'll speak a little more generally, because there's a few large, what we call obligated parties in the renewable natural gas space, who are large oil and gas companies. Folks who are very active in the renewable natural gas space and have active RNG trading desks within their firms are folks like Chevron, Shell, BP. And so these are some of the larger players that we like to include as our marketer. So what will happen is, in front of the BG&E meter, the transfer of title of our gas will occur in front of the meter. That marketer, that big trading desk, whether it's either of those three parties or any other entity, they turn around and they sell the brown gas, the physical molecules, into BG&E's system, whether it's directly to BG&E or to one of BG&E's customers on their system. And then those environmental attributes are decoupled and sold to a different counterparty who has some kind of corporate mandate where they need to be purchasing these environmental credits to satisfy their corporate goals for carbon reduction.
All right, so much like the electrical system, a third-party supplier markets their electricity is 100% renewable, but what's actually coming off the grid to the customer, nobody really knows what they have. It's
Yeah,
gonna
I
be
mean, like
produced at a
once
coal plant, right?
it's effectively a paper trail, right? It's like once the whether you're doing renewable electricity and you're putting renewable electricity onto the grid, there's no way of actually knowing if you're purchasing those renewably produced electrons. It's the same thing with gas. We're putting the gas into the system. They don't know if they're surely not buying those renewably produced molecules, but it's the paper trail of the credits that get distributed.
All right, that's helpful for me, and I think it's helpful for a lot of people to understand, because we get those questions a lot with the electricity side of the house, and people make allegations and it's deceptive marketing, and it's not really.
It's not. It's just tracking what's being produced and what's being bought.
All right, fair enough. That's helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any additional discussion on condition number 2?
I'll just note, Mr. Chairman, that with respect to number 2, that I agree with BGE on this one, because I don't believe a cost benefit analysis, if we say cost benefit analysis, that means does it cost, it's not just the cost of it, but it is the cost, does the cost justify making the change? And if somebody did want multiple suppliers, I don't know that cost benefit analysis is really useful, because we might say that, hey, that customer has to pay for it. But if it were, just sort of, well, it's not cost beneficial, just don't do it, that means they can't use more than one supplier. I'm not sure that's the right answer. So I don't see the benefit right now of requiring a cost benefit analysis.
Seeing no objection from my colleagues, the commission will strike staff's condition number 2 and find in favor of Baltimore Gas and Electric. Moving to condition number 3, this is a notification to the supplier regarding operational flow orders and other disconnections or services regarding unscheduled maintenance. I'll turn to Mr. Baker. Why would it be the responsibility of the utility to tender this notice to the supplier? They'll be tendering it to the customer, but is there any privity of contract between the utility and the supplier? Commissioner O'Donnell is in my head now with yes. Is there any privity? Why are we putting BGE in the middle?
I'm not sure. I'm going to stay away from the legal privity of contract argument, but the premise of this recommendation is BG&E is causing the outage that basically they have. Now, granted, like there could be various reasons that they have to call these outages, but BG&E they're the one who is causing the supply of gas to not come to them. And so this premise, in which case the gas supplier needs to be able to react. And so viewing that basically you're creating an arbitrary, in either situation, you're creating in the situation that's envisioned by BG&E, they're going to tell that RNG customer, and then the supplier will need to react. This is saying, why not just also tell the supplier at the same time? And so I don't view it as a hindrance to BG&E to notify that supplier that, hey, we're going to be causing an outage to one of your gas supplies.
Okay, well, let's hear Ms. Sikora's rebuttal to why it would be a burden on BGE.
I don't know that it would be a burden if we actually knew. Again, we might not know who the supplier is that the RNG, and I'm going to start calling them the producer, because I do agree that the customer, we were thinking of them as the interconnection customer. They were taking an interconnection service from us. That's why we're calling them the customer, but I'll use producer to be less confusing. But we might not know who they're selling the gas to. So, I think if the commission did want to put us in this position where we would have to notify both the RNG producer and the supplier, dealing with the RNG, we would need to add language into our tariff requiring the RNG producer to tell us who their supplier is. because otherwise they would have no obligation to tell us, and frankly, we'd have no reason to require it. So, just if you do require this, BG, I think we'll have to come up with some additional language to include in the tariff.
But in BG&E's tariff, they specify that you can only use one supplier. So it's confusing to me how BG&E can make that a requirement, but then also not know who they're using. Because why would we limit the use of which supplier at that point? I think that's part of this concern. So.
I didn't quite understand you, Mr. Baker, but Ms. Sikora, did you understand Mr. Baker's statement?
Yes, I did, and I have to admit I don't know the answer to that, so I will look to my colleagues if anyone can explain.
This is John Train. I think at the end of the day, if the commission were to ask us to also notify the supplier, I think there's a way that we could probably pull that information from our systems. It would be manual, but I think we could do that.
Okay, Mr. Frayne, I think the commission will make it easy on you. If you know who the supplier is, provide the notice, but the commission, with the concurrence of my colleagues, will not be supportive of staff's condition 3A in this circumstance, because there will be circumstances where the utility will not know who the supplier is. But Mr. Frayne, we'll take you up on your offer. If you do know who the supplier is, provide that information to both we'll call it the producer now, the producer and the supplier at the same time. And it should be easy because we're only starting with one. We'll move on to condition number 6. And that is with respect to staff's addition of the 20% issue here. I know BGE does not agree with the proposed change. And for staff, Mr. Baker, this condition doesn't seem to make much sense for at least the current situation with only one customer. I suspect that this proposal envisions more customers down the road, but right now it doesn't make any real sense with respect to Bioenergy Devco. So are you planning for the future with respect to this tariff proposal?
This is discussing proposal number 6, modifying section 4.2.
Yes, correct. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure I was on the right spot. Yes, no, this is thinking about the future, and I mean most of our recommendations were basically set up and with thinking that this is going to evolve and we're going to add new suppliers in the future. And so I understand that under the specific circumstance that this is for this one customer, maybe that provision would be a hindrance. And that's why we've offered verbally a modification whereby we would allow where BG&E and the customer within their interconnection agreement can agree to which term that would apply in the imbalancing situation. But since this is going to be a tariff and not a special contract between them and one other customer, it made sense to us to have basically set this up so more than one customer can go and use this tariff. And so right now there seems to be a number of, this is set up for one single customer, which then kind of begs the question, why are we doing a tariff and not a special contract? So
you raise a good point. Let's hear Ms. Sikora's rebuttal.
But I guess I would say I don't know that this provision was necessarily for the fact that there's one customer, but it was set up this way because, even the customers that potentially could, we don't envision RNG customers putting big loads onto our system. It's just, it would have to be like a really huge plant to produce the kind of volumes where we would need to be worried about less than 1,000 decatherms a day imbalance. So it's really not so much that, oh, we're just dealing with bioenergy. It's just in general, we don't envision any RMG producer coming to us that is going to, be saying, hey, I'm going to put 100,000 decatherms on your system, or, I want to. I mean, first of all, we'd probably have to do a lot of expansion. It would be really expensive, and so that would make it infeasible. But, it's just, I don't think the kind of situations we're dealing with are going to lend themselves to those kind of large volumes where it would really be necessary to say, is an imbalance less than 1,000 going to be problematic for us? We can handle an imbalance of 1,000 decatherm, and we're comfortable with that. And so we don't see the need again, not even just for this customer producer, but in general for any producer that could come to us.
Thank you for that response, Ms. Sikora. And Mr. Baker, I appreciate your initial response that a tariff is for all customers now and in the future, and the fact that we just have one customer before us shouldn't confine our decisions today. That said, and in light of what Ms. Sikora just said and with the concurrence of my colleagues, I would move that we not adopt staff's proposal at this time. We always have the ability to revisit later at some future date. It does seem premature at this time to include these provisions, although we should have them handy. We may need them in the future. So the commission will find in favor of BGE and strike condition number 6 by staff. I believe that resolves all of the
The whole thing, or just the 20%?
just the proposal,
Okay.
the staff's proposal.
What did
Yes.
they say about 7, 8, and 9?
7, 8, and 9 have all been addressed by the parties. Yeah. Okay, so we're done with BGE and staff. Now we turn to Bioenergy Devco's concerns with respect to gas quality standards. So Mr. Prange, does your client still object to staff's modifications to gas quality standards if the utility is able to grant Bioenergy Devco a deviation or waiver?
We will certainly accept the deviation or waiver. I mean, that is certainly will work for us. We really wanted to put on record and make sure everyone is aware of if you really look at that NGA, the NGA guide that is relied upon, that guide it says many places in there, it is a starting point. We just urge staff and PSC and gas line transporters to not read that NGA guide as the end all and be all, essentially the Bible for how to handle RNG and the interconnection and gas quality issues. It's a helpful guide. There's a lot of good information in there.
Thank you, Mr. Prange. We recognize that the NGA guide sets a baseline, some minimums. And we've heard that staff does not object to delegating authority to BGE to grant deviations or waivers of the gas quality requirements under the new proposed RNG tariff. So with the ability for BGE to grant those waivers, the concerns that you addressed in your comments, we could effectively set aside at this point. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is true. That is correct.
Well,
yes.
With maybe one minor caveat, one minor comment, being the whole reason that we look for long-term contracts across the board with these projects. I mean, these are $40 to $45 million investments that we're making, and the reason that there's one particular issue with the total diluents that we were discussing at length in recent weeks with BG&E was if we did not get this kind of deviation waiver with BG&E that you guys have delegated their authority to do so, then we would have to increase the cost associated with our equipment significantly, even just to accommodate a very, very, very minor shift. And so without understanding that that's going to be part of the tariff, but it's going to be part of BG&E's delegated authority to do so, we would like to just kind of make a general comment about, hopefully we can come to that delegation being a long-term waiver, not being like a year-over-year approval or anything like that.
One moment, Mr. Porter. Commissioner Herman.
So, Mr. Baker, your comments say on page bottom of 22 under 23, staff does not object to the initial delegation of responsibility, except staff desires that this delegation be considered conditional, subject to staff review and intervention if warranted. And when I look at what I believe is the correct tariff provision, which is on page 65A of BGE's tariff, I think, Ms. Sikora, you tell me if I'm in the wrong place. It says that with advance notice from the customer in writing, BGE may allow deviations from these standards on a case-by-case basis at its sole discretion. Are these all the provisions that are related? These are all related here, right?
Yes, I'm going to defer on these issues to Mr. Borkowski as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the discretion that you're referencing, the delegation that you're referencing, paid on gas quality standards, item 3 on 65A is what you're talking about, the delegation here. Is that correct, Mr. Borkowski?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, John Borkowski for staff. Yes, you're correct.
Okay. So let me ask my question. Hold on, let me ask my question.
Okay.
My question is, you've said, except staff desires this delegation be considered conditional, subject to staff review and intervention if warranted. And this is definitive with advance notice. BGE in its sole discretion allows deviations. So where is your condition addressed, if it is at all?
Well, I think that, and I recall Chairman Stanek mentioning earlier, about the discussion about, this is the first mover, and we will have an opportunity to revisit these tariffs in the future. And, we have to recognize we're only dealing with one feedstock here. There are many different types of RNG feedstocks. We're all still learning. And the fact is, and this is where I do agree with Bioenergy, I mean, this is a starting point, and I think we'll have to have an opportunity to review the experiences of RNG suppliers going forward and determine if there should be an intervention. But staff's intent is not to really get involved in the operations of the plant, and to that extent, we want to allow BGE to have that opportunity, to provide those waivers. But I think our comments are more looking at the total collective experience of all RNG suppliers. We would have to look down the road to see how we would adjust, recognizing that we're only starting here with one guideline that we're choosing as a common reference point at this point in time.
Okay, so it looks like the commission's pipeline safety manager will be notified after the fact annually of the deviations. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that's where you're talking about. It's conditional kind of going forward that we're going to look and see, we're going to see what's going on every, in an annual filing with respect to deviations. And if we see something, we'll flag it later. Is that you
Exactly,
expect would happen?
exactly. Yeah, we did not want to be involved in the day-to-day operations, but we wanted an opportunity for an annual review to be able to
Okay.
guide us going forward.
All right. I just wanted to make sure that we had that I understood the process. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'm with the annual reporting. I think that addresses my concern.
Thank you. But before I give a recap on the scorecard, so all the parties know where the commission ended up, any additional comments or questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, I will call a motion in a moment. The commission's the commission staff's recommended conditions are adopted with the exception of conditions number 1, 2, the first part of 3, and number 6. The other conditions are approved with the concurrence of the parties. The concern with gas quality, as articulated by Bioenergy Devco, is addressed, noting the waiver authority that BGE will have with its company. So I hereby propose a motion, and of course, particularly for staff, with respect to the conditions that the commission did not approve, our determination here today will be without prejudice to revisiting these issues in the future once we see a number of new interconnection customers or producers subscribe to this section of BGE's tariff. So I thereby move that we accept the tariff revisions for filing subject to the conditions and revisions proposed by staff in its comments dated August 18th, 2021, as revised at today's administrative meeting, and hereby direct BG to file revised tariff pages with an effective date of August 25th, 2021. The vote begins with Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved. Seeing no additional business on today's administrative meeting, this meeting is now adjourned. Have a great day.
Thank you all.